Hello, this is Jeeves and the Feudal Spirit by P.G. Wodehouse, Chapter 4. This Cheesewright, I should perhaps have mentioned earlier, is a bimbo who from the cradle upwards has devoted himself sedulously to aquatic exercise. He was captain of boats at Eton. He rowed 4 years for Oxford. He sneaks off each summer at the time of Henley Regatta and sweats lustily with his shipmates on behalf of the Leander Club. And if he ever goes to New York, I have no doubt that he will squander a fortune sculling about the lake in Central Park at 25 cents a throw. It is only rarely that the oar is out of his hand. Well, you can't do that sort of thing without developing the thews and sinews, and all this galley slave stuff has left him extraordinarily robust. His chest is broad and barrel-like, and the muscles of his brawny arms strong as iron bands. I remember Jeeves once speaking of someone of his acquaintance whose strength was as the strength of 10, and the description would have fitted Stilton nicely. He looks like an all-in wrestler. Being a pretty broad-minded chap and realising that it takes all sorts to make a world, I had always till now regarded this beefiness of his with kindly toleration. The way I look at it is, if blighters want to be beefy, let them be beefy. Good luck to them, say I. What I did not like at moment of going to press was the fact that in addition to bulging in all directions with muscle, he was glaring at me in a highly sinister manner. His air that of one of those fiends with hatchet who are always going about the place slaying six. He was plainly much stirred about something, and it would not be going too far to say that, as I caught his eye, I wilted where I sat. Thinking that it must be the circumstances of his having found me restoring the tissues with a spot of the right stuff that was causing his chagrin, I was about to say that the elixir in my hand was purely medicinal, and had been recommended by a prominent Harley Street physician, when he spoke. If only I could make up my mind. About what, Stilton? About whether to break your foul neck or not. I did a bit more wilting. It seemed to me that I was alone in a deserted smoking room with a homicidal loony. It is a type of loony I particularly bar, and the homicidal loony I like least is one with a 44 chest and biceps in proportion. His fingers, I noticed, were twitching, always a bad sign. Oh, for the wings of a dove, about summed up my feelings as I tried not to look at them. Break my foul neck, I said, hoping for further information. Why? You don't know. I haven't the foggiest. Ho! He paused at this point to dislodge a fly which had sauntered in through the open window and become mixed up with his vocal cords. Having achieved his object, he resumed. Wooster! Still here, old man? Wooster! Said Stilton, as if he wasn't grinding his teeth. I don't know how know a good ground tooth when I see one. What was the thought behind that moustache of yours? Why did you grow it? Well, rather difficult to say. Of course, one gets these whims. I scratched the chin for a moment. I suppose I felt it might brighten things up, I hazarded. Or had you an ulterior motive? Was it part of a subtle plot for stealing Florence from me? My dear Stilton, it all looks very fishy to me. Did you know what happened just now when we left my uncle's? Sorry, no. I'm a stranger in these parts myself. He ground a few more teeth. I will tell you. I saw Florence home in a cab, and all the way there she was raving about that moustache of yours. It made me sick to listen to her. I weighed the idea of saying something to the effect that girls would be girls, and must be expected to have their simple enthusiasms, but decided better not. When we got off at her door and I turned after paying the driver, I found she was looking at me intently, examining me from every angle, her eyes fixed on my face. You enjoyed that, of course. Shut up! Don't interrupt me. Right-ho. I only meant it must have been pretty gratifying. He brooded for a space. Whatever had happened at that lovers' get-together, one could see that the memory of it was stirring him like a dose of salts. A moment later, he said, and paused, wrestling with his feelings. A moment later, he went on, finding speech again, she announced that she wished me to grow a moustache too. She said, I quote her words, that when a man has a large pink face and a head like a pumpkin, a little something around the upper lip often does wonders in the way of easing the strain. Would you say my head was like a pumpkin rooster? Not a bit, old man. Not like a pumpkin? No, not like a pumpkin. Touches the dome of St. Paul's, perhaps. Well, that is what she compared it to, and she said that if I split it in the middle with a spot of hair, the relief to pedestrians and traffic would be enormous. She's crazy. I wore a moustache my last year at Oxford, and it looked frightful. Nearly as loathsome as yours. Moustache, forsooth, said Stilton, which surprised me, for I hadn't supposed he knew words like forsooth. I wouldn't grow a moustache to please a dying grandfather, I told her. A nice fool I'd look with a moustache, I said. It's how you look without one, she said. Is that so? I said. Yes, it is, she said. How? I said. Yes, she said. Who? I said, and she said, who to you? If she had added with knobs on, it would, of course, have made it stronger. But I must say I was rather impressed by Florence's work as described in this slice of dialogue. It seemed to me snappy and forceful. I suppose girls learn this sort of cut-and-thrust stuff at their finishing schools. And Florence, one must remember, had been moving a good deal of late in bohemian circles. Chelsea's studios and the wombs of the intelligentsia in Bloomsbury, and places like that where the repartee is always of a high order. So, that was that, proceeded Stilton, having brooded for a space. One thing led to another. Hot words passed to and fro, and it was not long before she was returning the ring and saying she would be glad to have her letters back at my earliest convenience. I tut-tutted. He asked me rather abruptly not to tut-tut, so I stopped tut-tutting, explaining that my reason for having done so was that his tragic tale had moved me deeply. My heart aches for you, I said. It does it? Profusely. Ho! You doubt my sympathy? You bet I doubt your ruddy sympathy. I told you just now that I was trying to make up my mind, and what I'm trying to make it up about is this. Had you foreseen that would happen? Did your cunning fiend's brain spot what was bound to occur if you grew a moustache and flashed it on Florence? I tried to laugh lightly, but you know how it is with these light laughs. They don't always come out just the way you would wish. Even to me, it sounded more like a gargle. Am I right? Was that the thought that came into your cunning fiend's brain? Certainly not. As a matter of fact, I haven't got a cunning fiend's brain. Jeeves has. The plot could have been his. Was it Jeeves who wove this snare for my feet? My dear chap, Jeeves doesn't weave snares for feet. He would consider it a liberty. Besides, I told you he is the spearhead of the movement which disapproves of my moustache. I see what you mean. Yes, on second thoughts I am inclined to acquit Jeeves of complicity. The evidence points to your having thought up the scheme yourself. Evidence? What do you mean, evidence? When we were at your flat and I said I was expecting Florence, I noticed a very significant thing. Your face lit up. It didn't. Pardon me, I know when a face lights up and when it doesn't. I could read you like a book. You were saying to yourself, this is the moment. This is where I spring it on her. No, nothing of the sort. If my face lit up, which I gravely doubt, it was merely because I reasoned that as soon as she arrived, you would be leaving. You wanted me to leave? I did. You were taking up a space which I required for other purposes. It was plausible, of course, and I could see it shook him. He passed a hand-like hand, gnarled with toiling at the oar, across his brow. Well, I shall have to think it over. Yes, I shall have to think it over. Go away and start now, is what I would suggest. I will. I shall be scrupulously fair. I shall weigh this and that. But if I find my suspicions are correct, I shall know what to do about it. And with these ominous words he withdrew, leaving me not a little bowed down with weight of woe. For apart from the fact that when a bird of Stilton's impulsive temperament gets it into his nut that you have woven snares for his feet, practically anything can happen in the way of violence and mayhem. It gave me goose pimples to think of Florence being at large once more. It was with a heavy heart that I finished my whisky and splash and tottered home. Woosa! A voice seemed to be whispering in my ear. Things are getting hot, old sport. Jeeves was at the telephone when I reached the sitting room. I am sorry, he was saying, and I noticed he was just as suave and firm as I had been at our recent get-together. And no, please, further discussion is useless. I am afraid you must accept my decision as final. Good night. From the fact that he had not chucked in a lot of sirs, I presumed that he had been talking to some pal of his, though from the curtness of his tone, probably not the one whose strength was as the strength of 10. What was that, Jeeves? I asked. A little tiff with one of the boys at the club? No, sir. I was speaking to Mr. Percy Gorringe, who rang up shortly before you entered. Affecting to be yourself, I informed him that his request for £1,000 could not be entertained. I thought that this might spare you discomfort and embarrassment. I must say I was touched. After being worsted in that clash of wills vows, one might have expected him to show dudgeon and be loath to do the feudal thing by the young master. But Jeeves and I, though we may have our differences, as it might be on the subject of lip joy, do not allow them to wankle. Thank you, Jeeves. Not at all, sir. Lucky you came back in time to do the needful. Did you enjoy yourself at the club? Very much, sir. More than I did at mine. Sir? I wan into Stilton Cheesewhite there and found him in difficult mood. Tell me, Jeeves, what do you do at this junior Ganymede of yours? Oh, well, sir, many of the members play a sound game of bridge. The conversation too rarely fails to touch a high level of interest, and should one desire more frivolous entertainment, there are the club books. Oh, yes, I remember. Perhaps you do too, if you happened to be around when I was relating the doing at Totley Towers, the country seat of Sir Watkin and Bassett, when this club book had enabled me to put it so crushingly across the powers of darkness in the shape of a Wodehouse Spode. Under Rule 11 at the Junior Ganymede, you may recall, members are required to supply intimate details concerning their employers for inclusion in the volume. And its pages revealed that Spode, who was an amateur dictator of sorts, running a gang called the Black Shorts, who went about in black footer-bags shouting, "Hail Spode!" also secretly designed ladies' underclothing under the trade name of Eulalie Sewers. Armed with this knowledge, I had, of course, little difficulty in reducing him to the level of a third-class power. These dictators don't want a thing like that to get spread about. But though the club book had served me well on that occasion, I was far from approving of it. Mine has been in many ways a checkered career, and it was not pleasant to think that full details of episodes I would prefer to be buried in oblivion were giving a big belly laugh daily to a bunch of valets and butlers. You wouldn't tear the Worcester material out of that club book, could you, Jeeves? I fear not, sir. It contains matter that can fairly be described as dynamite. Very true, sir. Suppose the contents were bruited about and reached the ears of my Aunt Agatha. You need have no concern on that point, sir. Each member fully understands that perfect discretion is a sine qua non. All the same, I'd feel happier if that page, those 11 pages, sir. If those 11 pages were consigned to the flames? A sudden thought struck me. Is there anything about Stilton Cheesewhite in that book? A certain amount, sir. Damaging? Not in the real sense of the word, sir. His personal attendant merely reports that he has a habit when moved of saying, "Ho!" and does Swedish exercises in the nude each morning before breakfast. I sighed. I hadn't really hoped, and yet it had been a disappointment. I have always held, rightly, I think, that nothing eases the tension of a difficult situation like a well-spotted bit of blackmail. And it would have been agreeable to have been in a position to go to Stilton and say, "Cheesewhite, I know your secret," and watch him wilt. But you can't fulfil yourself to any real extent in that direction if all the party of the second part does is say, "Who?" and tie himself into knots before sailing into the eggs and be. It was plain that with Stilton there could be no such moral triumph as I had achieved in the case of Wodehouse Spode. "Ah, well," I said resignedly, "if that's that, That's that. What?
So it would appear, sir.
Nothing to do but keep the chin up and the upper lip as stiff as can be managed. I think I'll go to bed with an improving book. Have you read The Mystery of the Pink Crayfish by Rex West?
No, sir, I have not enjoyed that experience. Ah, pardon me, sir, I was forgetting. Lady Florence Cray spoke to me on the telephone shortly before you came in. Her ladyship would be glad if you would ring her up. I'll get the number, sir.
I was puzzled. I could make nothing of this. No reason, of course, why she shouldn't want me to give her a buzz, but on the other hand, no reason that I could see why she should. Did she say what she wanted?
No, sir.
Odd, Jeeves.
Yes, sir. One moment, milady. Here is Mr. Wooster.
I took the instrument from him and helloed.
Bertie?
On the spot.
I hope you weren't in bed.
No.
I thought you wouldn't be, Bertie. Will you do something for me? I want you to take me to a nightclub tonight.
Eh?
A nightclub. A rather low one. I mean, garish and all that sort of thing. It's for the book I'm writing. Atmosphere.
Oh, I said, enlightened. I knew all about this atmosphere thing. Bingo Little's wife, the well-known novelist Rosie M. Banks, is as hot as a pistol on it. Bingo has often told me she frequently sends him off to take notes of this and that, so that she shall have plenty of ammunition for her next chapter. If you're a novelist, apparently, you have to get your atmosphere correct, or your public starts writing you stinkers beginning, "Dear madam, were you aware you're doing something about a nightclub?"
Yes. I'm just coming to the part where my hero goes to one, and I've never been to any, except the respectable one, where everybody goes, which aren't the sort of thing I want. What I need is something more.
Garish?
Yes, garish.
You want to go to tonight?
It must be tonight, because I'm off tomorrow afternoon to Brinkley.
Oh, you're going to stay with Aunt Dahlia?
Yes. Well, can you manage it?
Oh, rather. Delighted.
Good. Darcy Cheese, right, said Florence, and I noticed the steely, inner voice. Was to have taken me, but he finds himself unable to do so. So I have had to fall back on you.
This might, I thought, have been more tactfully put. But I let it go. "Right-ho," I said. "I'll call for you about 11:30. You are surprised? You are saying to yourself, 'Come, Wooster, what's all this?' Wondering why I was letting myself in for a beano from which I might well have shrunk. The matter is susceptible of a ready explanation. My quick mind, you see, had spotted instantly that this was where I might quite conceivably do myself a bit of good. Having mellowed this girl with food and drink, who knew but that I might succeed in effecting a reconciliation between her and the piece of cheese with whom until tonight she had been headed for the altar rails, thus averting the peril which must always loom on the Wooster horizon while she remained unattached and at a loose end. It needed, I was convinced, only a few kindly words from a sympathetic man of the world, and these I was prepared to supply in full measure. "Jeeves," I said, "I shall be going out again. This will mean having to postpone finishing The Mystery of the Pink Crayfish to a later date, but that can't be helped. As a matter of fact, I rather fancy I have already wrested its secret from it. Unless I am very much mistaken, the man who bumped off Sir Eustace Willoughby but was the butler.
Indeed, sir.
That is what I think, having sifted the clues. All that stuff throwing suspicion on the vicar doesn't fool me for an instant. Will you wing up the mottled oyster and book a table in my name?
Not too near the band, sir.
How white you are, Jeeves. Not too near the band.